Pope Leo's Latin Mass problem. This is an article just printed recently in October 22nd, 2025 by the Jesuit journal America. So I haven't read this article, so I'm going to read it with you and let the words just flow out of my lips, out of my tongue. Let them come however they may desire. Let's have a look. What do the Jesuits at America Magazine say? Well, Pope Leo's Latin Mass problem. Let's have a look. It's not a very long article. And it starts with, I don't envy Pope Leo the 16th. Pope Leo the 16th. Oh my God. He is not Pope Leo the 16th. He is Pope Leo the 14th. You educated Jesuits. You missed him by two other Leos. He's Leo the 14th, not Leo the 16th. There was Benedict the 16th, but this is Leo the 14th. Like your ABCs, there's the 1, 2, 3s. Do you know how to count, or that's beyond you? Or is it too scholastic, too classical, too rationalistic to endeavor to, think of numbers? Anyways, according to Leo, I don't envy Pope Leo the 16th. Well, he hasn't been born yet, so let's correct you and say Pope Leo the 14th. As he determines how to approach dueling papal edicts about the celebration of the Tridentine Rite. I want to comment, but let me just... Let's continue the paragraph. His predecessors, Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis, took markedly different approaches to liturgical reform. Leo must chart a course between them. So they want him to be lukewarm, so God will vomit him out of his mouth, according to the book of Revelations. You either are hot or cold. There is yes, yes, no, no, as Jesus says. Anything else is from the evil one, from the devil. But, they're Jesuits. So for them, yes and no, they're two extremes. Let's just go with the, maybe, the lukewarm. While settling on which is fundamentally the correct path, and what gives Leo the superiority of Benedict, above Benedict. Now let's kind of comment quickly here. Dueling papal edicts. First of all, as you've watched my channel, I do not believe for 1 second that Francis was ever the vicar of Christ. But why? Because, again, watch the videos, because Benedict never resigned the papacy. He kept on being called Pope. He dressed in the papal white. He kept the papal name of Benedict till the day he died. He lived in the Vatican. He died as Pope. When Francis chose cardinals, he brought them to Pope Benedict to receive his blessing every single time. When he passed away, he got the papal funeral and was buried as Pope in St. Peter's Basilica. And his tombstone says Benedictus P.P., Pope and Pontiff. So if there was a Pope and Pontiff still living, how can there be a Pope and Pontiff, two Popes and Pontiffs? As the old movie Highlander would say, there can only be one. There can only be one. So for the most part, one can say Francis was just the administrator of the Diocese of Rome. He was the acting bishop, the auxiliary bishop of Rome, and he could, for the impeded see of Benedict XVI. So he could run the church as in his stead. Because Benedict, as I said before, in his last audience, you can watch it, read it yourself, I've got videos on it, himself says that what he has done, meaning the renunciation, what was the effect of it? He said that he lost the power for governance of the office, not the actual office. And he says that what he did not revoke what he received in 2005, which is the papacy. the papal office. So that's besides. So that's two popes. Well, let's play along. Oh, furthermore, Francis, go to the Vatican website. Look at every single document, every single exhortation, every single letter, every single encyclical. Francis just signs his name as Francis. That's it. No pope, no pontiff, no PP, no nothing. Leo does, PP, pope and pontiff. Benedict did. John Paul II did. Paul VI did. John the 23rd did. But Francis knew what he was not. Okay, so that right away gives you the status of the documents. Second of all, he calls it the Tridentine Rite, giving the impression that it was a rite invented at the Council of Trent. So it is the Tridentine Rite, when in fact the so-called Tridentine Rite is in fact the Roman Rite, the rite of the Church of Rome, of the Curial Missal, and just amended slightly by Pius V. It was not a new creation. It was not a new invention. It was not a trashing of the ancient Roman rite, like, the so-called Rite of Paul VI, the Rite of Bernini. But it was the ancient Roman rite, and it was meant only for the Church of Rome, in Rome, and the Diocese of Rome. Pius V himself says all the churches in the West who have different usages, even of the Roman usage, could keep their usages intact as long as they were over 200 years old, because that meant they are still traditional. What happened after Vatican II with the fake Roman Rite of Paul VI is that if you have to, instead of adhering to antiquity, like Pius V with the Tridentine Rite, you abandon the ancient and adhere to novelty, to the new. And Paul VI himself called his rite a novelty and innovation. He called it the liturgical innovation of the new rite. And it's a new rite, it's not the Roman Rite. All right, so that part is done. And furthermore, Cardinal Ratzinger, so under Pope John Paul II, Cardinal Ratzinger later became Pope Benedict XVI. In 2003, in an interview with Raymond Arroyo on EWTN, which I have a video on, you can again find it, explicitly states in 2003, under Pope John Paul II, that the Tridentine Rite, or the Ancient Roman Rite, has never been abrogated, meaning never been forbidden or banned. Not that any pope can ban an apostolic liturgy or an apostolic rite. He would become a schismatic. So that was that. And then in 2007, when Pope Benedict liberated the Tridentine, the traditional Roman Rite, he just said the same thing. It's never been abrogated. So every priest has, even in 2003, he said, every priest actually has the right to say it, because it has never been banned. So Francis's attack on ancient tradition, on the ancient Roman Rite, was because they call it incompatible with the ecclesiology and Eucharistic understanding of the Post Conciliar Church. Well, do you accept then Francis and his experts like Andrea Grillo basically are forcing Catholics to choose between the pre-1969 ecclesiology and Eucharistic understanding and the post-1969. So any Catholic, any Christian of any worth would have to say, well, we have to adhere to the apostolic ancient received tradition as the creed, the creed of faith of Vatican I, which is a repetition of the creed of faith of Trent, explicitly states that we adhere and embrace and accept the received traditions, of apostolic and ecclesiastical traditions, the received rites used, customarily used, so traditionally used, the rites traditionally used, not invented, not created by committee, by experts, in the administration of the sacraments. This is the Catholic faith. So if you're forcing us to choose between the Post Conciliar ecclesiology and the Post Conciliar understanding with the Pre-Conciliar, any true Christian would have to choose the Pre-Conciliar. So so it's Francis was just full of hatred for anything Catholic. Let's be honest. So the problem. What's the problem? Jesuits. What does Pope Leo the 16th? The invented Leo, which hasn't appeared yet. What's his problem? The problem is Pope, which Francis. Don't call him Pope. He himself never called himself Pope. Even in his last will and testament. Again, I did a video on it. He himself, in his last will and testament, where he chooses to be buried in St. Mary Major, not with most of the other popes in St. Peter's. He himself says that in his whole life as priest and bishop, never as pope. As priest and bishop, he says that explicitly. Doesn't even mention pope at all. Anyways, let's play along. Pope Francis' motu proprio Traditionis Custodes, which is like, used toilet paper. That's the dogmatic, authoritative status of it. Is like, your used toilet paper when you have, stomach problems. It is that quality of document. And that's how it should be treated. And Pope Benedict's motu proprio Summorum Pontificum offered contradictory claims. Now, who do we believe? Benedict XVI, who was Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who participated actually at Vatican II, who knew exactly what the fathers and bishops of the council wanted, or Francis, who has never done that, who was never part of Vatican II. And he pretends to be the defender of Vatican II. Even Benedict XVI himself said what happened after the council to the liturgy of the Roman Church was not at all what the council intended. He called it a banal on-the-spot fabrication about your regular masses. In his introduction to the French edition of Monsignor Klaus Gamber's book, Problems of the Reform of the Roman Liturgy. I think that's the name of the book. I mentioned it previously. Okay. Offered contradictory claims about the liturgy. Well, one is true and one is false. One is true and one is false. Period. And it wouldn't be just under Benedict, it would have been John Paul II, because Benedict under John Paul II, Ratzinger, said that the ancient Roman rite was never abrogated, never forbidden. So Paul VI never forbade it. John Paul I never forbade it. John Paul II never forbade it, as they could not. Beyond dealing with the anti-magisterial tendencies often found in liturgically traditionalist Catholic communities, anti-magisterial tendencies. What are the anti-magisterial tendencies? Refusing modernism, refusing novelty, refusing innovation. These are Catholic tendencies. If a pope cannot make up a magisterium which is contradictory to the immemorial magisterium of the church. And I did a review on a book. You probably find it on my channel, Pope or Church. That was the name of the book, with two theologians, an older one and a newer one, where they discuss the infallibility of the ordinary magisterium, the teaching authority, the ordinary magisterium. So not like a declaration ex cathedra of a dogma. No, just the ordinary magisterium. The infallibility of the order. And when is it infallible? It is only infallible. It is only infallible. It is only infallible when it is preaching and teaching and reiterating the ancient deposit of faith with no innovation or novelty or contradiction. If it is not doing that, if it contradicts the deposit of faith, if it contradicts the constant teaching of the church, it is not infallible. It is a false magisterium. Okay, Leo must determine Leo must determine which motu proprio best expresses the unity of prayer and belief. Oh yeah, here you go. Because tradition is piece of shit. Yeah, I did say that, because that's exactly what it is. Custodes of Jorge the Apostate Bergoglio, the bishop dressed in white, used to live at a hotel in Vatican City, claimed that the Novus Ordo, the Rite of Paul VI, the fabricated on-the-spot production of Annibale Bonini and his experts, including Protestant advisors, was the unique, the only expression, true expression of the Roman Rite. The only true expression of the Roman faith, of the Catholic faith. So basically, he's saying that the previous liturgy, the ancient rite, is not a true expression of the Christian faith, of the Catholic faith. And only the Novus Ordo, invented by committee, was the unique expression, the only, one and only expression of the lex orandi, the law of prayer and the law of belief of the Roman Church. So you're telling us, so for 1700 years, oh no, what am I saying? Almost 1900 years, 1950 years. That was a false expression of the Christian faith, of the Catholic faith, and the liturgy invented in 1969 was the unique and only true expression of the Catholic faith, of the Christian faith, the lex orandi of the and lex credendi of the law of faith, law of prayer, law of belief of the Catholic Church. This is what Francis said. This is what his junta was promoting. Of course, we have to say no. It is actually a novelty. You're forcing us. You're pushing us. You're telling us to contradict you, and we will, because novelty cannot replace tradition. Novelty has always been condemned. St. Paul condemned novelty. Told his adherers to adhere to the tradition received whether by mouth or by letter, to hold on to the traditions they received. And this has been the state of all the ancient churches, Orthodox, Oriental, Orthodox, Catholic, Nestorian, whatever you want to call it. Well, even though they deny to be Nestorians, but that's a different topic. But this is what Traditionis Custodes. Well, the fake Roman Rite, the Rite of Paul VI, the Rite invented by Annibale Bonini and his experts, the castrated Roman Rite of Paul VI, was the unique expression of the Roman Rite. Yeah, okay. So, which is the best expression of the prayer and life of the Church? Well, of course, it's the ancient rite received by tradition, as the Creed of Vatican I and the Creed of Trent expressly states. It is a fraught choice, but one of the key ones of his papacy. The goal is to ensure that the law of faith and the law of our prayer, I was just mentioning it, lex orandi, lex credendi, are mutually enriching, such that there is no disjunction between the way we pray and the way we believe, and vice versa. And that is why, yes, you Jesuits are correct. The law of prayer is the law of belief. Now, tell me, what are the fruits of the liturgical reform? What is the springtime of the liturgical renewal? What happened? Loss of faith in the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Jesuits from what's his name? One of your Jesuit superstars explicitly states he does not believe in transubstantiation, meaning the very essence of the bread is no longer bread, but the very God himself, Jesus Christ. And the wine is no longer wine. The essence of it, it looks like wine, but its substance, its essence, is what it is no longer wine, but the very blood of Christ, Jesus. He denies transubstantiation. I did a video on it. What's his name? Father Thomas Rees, Jesuit. Yeah. So the law of prayer and the law of belief, has been destroyed through the change in the law of prayer. You change the way people pray, you change their belief. You change how they act, you change their belief. You change the discipline. You delete fasting, you change their belief. You delete penance, you change their belief. You no longer make them kneel in front of their supposed Lord and Master and Creator, Jesus Christ. In the New Testament, the Gospel, people knelt before Christ, asking Him for healing, and they bowed down and worshipped Jesus. And yet, when we are about to receive Him, incarnate, hidden under the form of bread and wine, we stick out our hand and just take Him like a potato chips, stick Him in our mouth. And of course, there are particles left. That's why it's kind of funny in the Novus Ordo while the priest is trying to, purify the vessels. Well, you just gave 100 people the Eucharist on their hands. So you've got Christ, the very pearls, the thing which is more precious than gold dust, as Saint Cyril of Jerusalem says, more precious than gold dust, to be stuck on their hands, thrown in the garbage. Yet you pretend to care about the purification of the vessels in the Novus Ordo when you gave 100, 200 people communion in the hand. So when you change the way, and of course the prayers have been altered completely, if you're unaware. And not just the propers or the standard unchangeable part has been changed significantly, dramatically, but even the changeable ones, the collects, and the prayer over the gifts, the secret, and the post-communion, they've all been altered completely, watered down completely. The orations have been watered down and altered to make them less offensive. By doing so, the Novus Ordo has changed so the lex orandi, the law of prayer of the Novus Ordo, has naturally altered the lex credendi, the law of belief. And that is what happened after its introduction, where people started to lose faith. Faith in the liturgy, faith in Christ incarnate, faith in the priesthood, faith in the sacrificial nature of the Mass, faith in doctrine. When you alter significantly the most sacred part of every Christian's worship, which is the Sunday liturgy, you alter their faith. And you destroy it. And the fruits are there to see for everybody. Unless your desire is actually the destruction of the faith. If you desire the destruction of the Catholic Church, you desire the destruction of the ancient Catholic Christian faith in the people, then the liturgical reform was an amazing success. What's great. That's what we wanted. But of course, if you want them to preserve the faith once for all received through the saints, then you would lament and condemn such a change. All right, let's continue. For Benedict, the liturgy promulgated by Pope Paul VI after the Second Vatican Council was the ordinary rite. Again, there is no such thing as the ordinary rite and the extraordinary rite. Benedict XVI invented these terms because, as he said, the ancient liturgy was never abrogated, never forbidden. It is the Roman rite. Paul VI himself, again, I have a couple of videos on it. He in his two speeches before the introduction, just about to introduce the new rite, he calls it the new rite. And actually he compares it, the Roman Missal and the Roman, he calls it the Roman Missal, meaning the the regular Missal, the pre-innovation Missal. And the new rite. He himself calls it the Roman Missal and the new rite. The Roman rite and the new rite. Paul VI himself. So the so-called ordinary form, Benedict XVI wanted to do that because he was too nice. He didn't want to call it, he called it the ordinary rite. Benedict XVI called it a banal, on-the-spot fabrication that gives stones there rather than bread. That's what Benedict XVI, as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger said. So, Paul VI, after as was the ordinary rite, as in the standard expression of the lex orandi of the church, because it was the most, now is kind of like the ordinary. Everybody is saying it. So, yeah, well, okay. So, and actually Benedict XVI tried to restore the correct translations of the Latin into the ordinary form. Even the consecration, for example, the consecration of the wine was falsely, from the Latin, falsely translated as "for you and for all. My blood was shed for you and for all," when the Gospels themselves, Christ himself in the New Testament, and in the Latin version of the ordinary form, says "for you and for many," not for all. Yet this false translation was universal. Some even doubted the efficacy, like, is this a valid consecration of the chalice or not? I believe it was, because as soon as you say, "this is my blood," I think St. Thomas Aquinas as well, this is the key phrase, is "this is my blood." But then you pervert it by saying "for you and for all," when it was not for you and for all. The Catechism of Trent, the Catechism of the Roman Catechism, specifically addresses this point. He says, yes, Christ died for all on the cross, so his death is efficacious for the salvation of all. Yet, in the Eucharist and the Mass, it is only for the many, meaning the many who accepted his salvation, who were baptized into him. These are the many. It's not the all. So, and actually even up to today, the Italian Missal, and I think the German Missal, keep the "for all," against the express command of Benedict XVI for a correct translation. Anyways, the Tridentine Rite was which largely follows Catholic liturgical practice. Catholic liturgical practice before the Council. Again, Vatican II, Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI in 1988 under Pope John Paul II, went to the Chilean bishops and talked to them specifically. Just look it up. Cardinal Ratzinger to Chilean bishops in 1988. You'll find the whole speech. Cardinal Ratzinger was a periti, one of the experts at Vatican II. He was one of the main progressive experts until he, of course, became more traditional over time. And he explicitly tells them. So he knows exactly Vatican II. He knows it in and out. He was part of the whole machine in Vatican II. And he explicitly says to the Chilean bishops in 1988 that Vatican II, in contrast to all the previous ecumenical councils, and I'm going to quote it in quotes, restricted itself to being a merely pastoral council that defined no dogma. Boom. This is what Cardinal Ratzinger, Benedict XVI, said. So this merely a pastoral council that defined no dogma, so up to that council, so for 2,000 years basically, this is the liturgical practice of the Catholic Church. And you can compare the traditional liturgical practice of the Roman Church or the Western churches, Catholic, the Roman, the Sarum Rite, the Rite of Lyon, the Rite of Braga, the Masoretic Rite, whatever, the Ambrosian Rite, the Carthusian Rite, the Dominican Rite. They all have huge similarities with the Byzantine Rite, with the Coptic Rite, with the Armenian Rite, because they're all coming from the source of apostolic tradition. The deformed rite of the Roman Church, the Rite of Paul VI, matches more the Protestant deform of the Anglican and Lutheran churches. So follows heresy instead of tradition. So for 2,000 years, this is the church. This is up to the pastoral council, who supposedly this pastoral council has the authority to abolish a received rite of the church, which is it's impossible. Vatican II itself, in its constitution to the Eastern churches, explicitly says You have to restore the ancient traditions, the ancient rites of your church, preserve them, and reintroduce them if they have disappeared in the past. Leo the 14th, when he talked to the, I have a video on it, when he talked to the, and I was so excited with this video, when he talked to the Eastern bishops, explicitly commands them to adhere to their traditions, to restore what was lost, which is what Vatican II said, to not water down their liturgies for, what is it called? He called it, don't water down or simplify your liturgies for convenience. But that's exactly what happened to the Roman Rite. So Vatican II tells the Eastern churches, which should match with the Roman, and Leo the 14th himself says it to the Eastern churches, restore the traditions. Don't water things down for convenience. Anyways, so the Tridentine Rite, which largely follows the Catholic liturgical practice before the Council, is the extraordinary form as non-standard. Well, because it's been banned in a lot of places. But now, since it became so prolific and it started to expanding under Benedict XVI, it became too much. It was too successful. A lot of young families and a lot of young people were going to these traditionalist masses, to the traditional Roman Rite, discovering it and adhering it and to loving it. That is the reason Francis Jorge Bergoglio of unhappy memory and his junta, his anti-Catholic junta, sought to ban and forbid the ancient Roman Rite, the traditional rite of the Catholic Church, of the Western Catholic Church, because it was too successful. This is diabolical as Cardinal Robert Sarah says. Robert Sarah said, to desire to ban the ancient Roman Rite is diabolical. So we know what kind of spirit moved Francis and his junta. Where are we here? The Tridentine Rite, which largely follows Catholic liturgical practice before the Council, is the extraordinary, as in non-standard expression, but both were expressions of that law of prayer and so of the faith. So, yeah, in a sense, yeah, the Novus Ordo is the expression, but it's a watered-down expression of the Catholic faith, which led to a watered-down faith, which led to abandonment of the faith, unlike the explicit traditional expression of the Catholic faith in the pre-conciliar, pre-Paul VI, pre-Bonini, Paul VI Rite, or Bonini Rite. For Pope Francis, again, he never called himself Pope. The Reformed Rite of Paul VI, the deformed, this is the more accurate, the deformed Rite of Paul VI, this is so accurate though, it is the Rite of Paul VI. It is the Rite of Paul VI. It is not the Catholic liturgical practice before the Council. It is not the Catholic Rite. It is the invented Rite of Paul VI. Yes, Jesuits, it is the Rite of Paul VI. Paul VI called it the liturgical novelty of the new Rite. So it is a new Rite. Constitutes the unique expression. See, I was just mentioning it too. See, this document, I made videos on it, so it's seared into my brain. So for Francis, the bishop dressed in white who lived at a hotel in Vatican City, the Rite of Paul VI, which is not the Roman Rite, constitutes the unique expression of the lex orandi. So it is the one and only expression of the law of prayer of the Roman Rite. So something which was invented in the late 60s is the unique and only expression of the Roman Rite, of law of prayer of the Roman Rite. So anything before it, or all the different rites of the West, or the Dominicans, or Carthusians, or the Ambrosians, no, they're nothing. They're not an expression of the Roman Rite. It is only the Rite of Paul VI, the invented rite, manufactured by committee, is the unique and only expression, prayer expression, lex orandi, the law of prayer of the Roman Rite. Francis, he's not Pope, Francis wrote that there was a single and identical prayer that expressed the church's unity. So, without a single and expressed, so this is, where is the diversity, unity and diversity? Where is this openness? Where is this, multiculturalism of Francis? If he's telling us that a single, unique, identical prayer is required for the unity of the church, then what are you going to do? Well, Francis is dead and gone, thanks be to God. What did you want to do? Do you want to ban all the Eastern Catholic churches from having the Byzantine Rite or the Coptic Rite or the Armenian Rite or the Ethiopic Rite or the Chaldean Rite? Because they have a completely different lex orandi. Or the Malabar, Syro-Malabar Rite, or the Malankara Rite. Are you going to ban them? Are you going to force them to adhere to the single and identical prayer of the Roman Church so we can have so we can have true church unity? Is that unity? This is dictatorial. This is what Cardinal Ratzinger and Benedict XVI said. This is a pope who thinks his will is law. He's an absolute monarch whose will is law. I can ban any liturgy, any tradition, for any reason, and I'll call it, well, no, it's for the unity of the church. So, Francis wrote that there was a single and identical prayer that expressed the church's unity. So therefore, the Eastern Catholics are not part of the church's unity. They're anti-unity. So we got to destroy their liturgies and force them to adhere to the Novus Ordo invented by Paul VI and his lackeys. Well, actually, Bonini, Paul VI was the lackey of Bonini, actually. This unity is intended to reestablish throughout the church. This unity I intend to reestablish throughout the Church of the Roman Rite. So, he wants conformity, uniformity, not as in Trent, where adhere to the ancient and abandon the novelty. No, abandon the ancient and adhere to the novelty. This is the upside down, this is the bizarro world of Francis. In other words, for Francis, there was no extraordinary expression of the lex orandi. Yeah, I know, there isn't. Because the so-called extraordinary form, meaning the traditional Roman Rite, received by tradition, is the lex orandi of the Roman Rite. It is, but in contrast, the new liturgical innovation of the new Rite, using Pope Paul VI's words, the Rite of Paul VI, according to the Jesuits, is a new formulation, not adhering to the ancient law of prayer of the church. Therefore, it is not actually, in fact, if you want to go all the way, I'll go all the way. The fake Roman Rite, the Novus Ordo, has nothing to do with the lex orandi of the Roman Church. It is it is the bastard rite, as Archbishop Marcel called it. And why is the bastard called? He called it the bastard rite because it marries Catholicism with Protestantism. This is the marriage of Catholicism and liberalism, giving us a bastard child, which is the Novus Ordo, which is the Rite of Paul VI. So the Rite of Paul VI is not the Roman Rite, as Paul VI himself makes clear. Paul VI calls it the new Rite, in contrast to the Roman Rite. That's what Paul VI himself says. So yeah, there was no such thing as the extraordinary expression of the Roman. For Francis, there was no extraordinary expression of the lex orandi. Yes, because it is the ordinary expression of the lex orandi of the Roman Church. Because the Novus Ordo Rite Paul VI is not the expression of the lex orandi of the Roman Church. It is a fabricated liturgy invented in the 1960s by experts with the assistance of heretics. There is only one Roman Rite, and it is not the Novus Ordo or Rite of Paul VI. and one unique expression of it, which again is not the Novus Ordo or the Rite of Paul VI. Whereas Benedict, who held that these two expressions of the lex orandi will in no way lead to a division in the church's lex credendi. Well, again, Benedict was such a diplomat, overly diplomatic, that he was such a coward actually to state the truth, which he did before he became pope, that he actually even abandoned the flock to a wolf. He resigned his active exercise of the ministry without resigning the ministry, and gave us an apostate in Francis to try to destroy everything he tried to rebuild. And they cannot, one can be charitable and say, well, the Novus Ordo is an expression of the lex credendi, the law of faith of the Catholic Church, but it is a watered down expression. It is a watered down expression, condemned actually by Leo XIV when he was talking with the Oriental churches. Don't water down your liturgies for convenience. And by watering it down, you water down the faith, which leads to error and heresy and abandonment and adhering to schism. And much worse than schism is adhering to heretical sects, which is the fruit of the liturgical reform, which is the fruit of the Rite of Paul VI, which is the fruit of the Novus Ordo, Missa, and all the 7 sacraments which they were destroyed. Not the sacraments as such, but the rites altered. For they are two usages of the Roman Rite. Well, no, there was the real Roman Rite, again, the real Roman Rite, and as Benedict himself said, in 1993, was it, when the book of Klaus Gomper came? A fabricated liturgy, a banal on-the-spot product, produced as in a manufacturing process. And it abandoned all forms of natural organic development. Actually, I mean, I quoted this expression of Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. And what's his name? Cardinal Robert Straub mentioned the exact quote, where he says again, and he's talking about the First Vatican Council, and says that the Pope, even Vatican I, did not designate the Pope as an absolute monarch. And actually, one of the functions of the Pope is to adhere to tradition and to preserve the liturgy in its integrity, not to invent a new rite. For Francis, the continued celebration of the extraordinary form leads to division because it insufficiently expresses its lex orandi in its lex orandi. So for Francis, the traditional, the received, the 2,000-year-old Roman Rite leads to division. Why? Because its law of prayer, its lex orandi, so the way it's the prayers of the liturgy, the ancient rite, because it's insufficiently expresses in its lex orandi the lex credendi of the church. So he says, so Francis says, according to the Jesuits, is that the law of prayer, the prayers of the ancient rite of the Roman Church, doesn't sufficiently express the law of faith of the church. So for 2,000 years, the ancient Roman Rite, which is so rich in doctrine and tradition, did not express sufficiently the faith of the Roman Church. But the watered down novelty of Paul VI expresses this faith better. And as I said, Andrea Grillo, one of the architects, I think his name is Andrea first, of Traditionis Custodes of Francis, he says that the ancient rite expresses a different ecclesiology. That's why it has to be banned and banished and destroyed and eliminated from the church. So basically they want to destroy the ancient liturgy, the ancient faith, the ancient prayers, because they do not conform to the new understanding of the church, of the Post Conciliar church. I mean, I don't need to further expand on this. Let's see how far this is going to go. Wow, that's actually quite a big article. Well, since I started, might as well finish it. I thought it was going to be a nice shorty one, but whatever. Uh, the one rite of the Roman Church. Where are we here? Yeah. A singular rite. Again, where is the diversity? What do you tell to the Armenian Catholics, the Coptic Catholics, the Chaldean Catholics, the traditional Carthusians, the traditional Dominicans, the traditional Masoretic Rite, the traditional Ambrosians? These are kind of usages of the Roman Rite, except for the Masoretic one. A singular rite. Of course, Pope Benedict, again, if you're talking about a singular rite, what do you take? The rite which was received by tradition for almost 2,000 years, or the one invented by committee in the 1960s? Well, for any faithful Christian, any faithful Catholic, anyone who upholds the traditions, as Paul VI, St. Paul the Apostle calls us to do, we would have to adhere to the ancient received rite of the Roman Church, as the Council of Trent and the First Vatican Council in its creed calls us to receive and embrace and adhere to the received apostolic and ecclesiastical traditions and the received, meaning traditional, rites traditionally, customarily used in the administration of the seven sacraments. This is the creed, part of the faith of the Catholic Church. So we have to adhere to the ancient rite, not the fabricated, invented stuff in the 1960s. A singular rite. Of course, Pope Benedict had a point when he wrote that what earlier generations held sacred remains sacred and great for us too. And he actually said that as well in 2003 with Raymond Arroyo as Cardinal Ratzinger under Pope John Paul II. For centuries, the extraordinary rite, meaning the Roman Rite, was used in the celebration of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, which enriched lives of saints and sinners for centuries. So what could be wrong with its continued celebration? Yeah, it's too Catholic. That's what's wrong with it. It does not adhere to the new ecclesiology and the new understanding and the new spirit and the new openness of the Second Vatican Council, or at least what people say the Second Vatican says. So what's wrong with the ancient 2,000-year-old liturgy of the Roman Church? First, it does not appear that Vatican II and Paul VI intended for there to be two expressions of the Roman Rite. So we're going to go reading minds now. Yeah, well, actually, we're not going to read minds because actually Paul VI never abrogated the ancient Roman Rite, as Cardinal Ratzinger, John Paul II, Cardinal Ratzinger, and Benedict XVI have said. And he actually, Paul VI didn't intend two expressions of the Roman Rite because Paul VI explicitly states there's the Roman Rite and then there's the new Rite. The new Rite is his Rite, which is not the Roman Rite. End of story. Rather, the council called for, and Paul VI carried out, the reform of and renewal of the Roman Rite. We're not going to dwell on that because Cardinal Ratzinger, who participated in the council, said what happened after the council is not actually was not at all what the council intended. And he should know better than you people. That is why the Tridentine Rite, again, it's not the Tridentine, it is the ancient Roman Rite. That even Pope Gregory the Great in the 6th century changed one part of the minor point I mentioned in a previous video. One minor point in the liturgy, only for the Curia in his own missal, not even for the rest of the Diocese of Rome. He was severely imitated some part of the Byzantine liturgy. I can't remember the exact point where he moved a certain part of the liturgy. He was condemned as novelty. And his reform, his change, didn't take effect for, 200 years before it kind of spread throughout the rest of the church. So it is the ancient Roman Rite. This is why the Tridentine Rite was never officially abrogated. Oh yeah, you're telling us. Yeah, because it is, as Pope Benedict noted, to abrogate it would have been to say that there were two rites, one no longer allowed and one allowed. There really is only one rite, and it's unrenewed and renewed versions. See, again, they're trying to tell you why, magically, why it was never abrogated. Well, because the new rite is the Roman Rite, actually. No, but you abrogate the missal. of 1962. You abrogate it, you kill it, you end it. Cardinal Ratzinger in 2003 with Raymond Arroyo as head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith explicitly stated that the Roman liturgy of the pre-conciliar rite, the traditional Roman rite, was never abrogated and actually is fully allowed to be used. The question for him was how it should be incorporated so it doesn't cause, conflicts. But in principle, every priest had the right, even in 2003, before his Summorum Pontificum in 2007, stated that, it has never been allowed, and actually it's allowed to be used. It's never been forbidden. Which means there were two Roman rites. Well, actually, there was one real Roman rite and the Rite of Paul VI. You people in the Jesuit journal call it the Rite of Paul VI, so it is not the Roman rite. That is why Francis quoted Paul VI in speaking of a singular prayer. It is further why Francis stated that whoever wishes to celebrate with devotion according to the earlier forms of the liturgy can find in the Reformed Roman Missal according to Vatican Council II. Actually, it's not according to Vatican Council II. It's according to Paul VI and Bernini. All the elements. So we're going to find elements of the Roman rites. Actually, that's what Paul VI himself says in one of his speeches, or the two speeches dealing with the new rite, the new liturgical innovation of the new rite, as he called it. He talks about, don't worry, people. There is like the skeletal structures of the Roman rite, they're still there in the new rite. Yeah, so you're going to give me bones instead of like the whole meat, the whole body. You're going to just give me, elements of the ancient liturgy still there. Still, the elements of the ancient Roman rite are still there in the new rite. No thanks. No thanks. No thanks. What traditionalist Catholics sometimes call the Mass of the Ages is the Vatican II Mass. Yeah, because at Vatican II, the ancient Roman rite was the one celebrated. It was years after Vatican II, 1969, the new liturgical innovation of the new Rite of Paul VI came into being. So the Mass of Vatican II is the ancient Roman Rite, because it is a singular rite, periodically reformed in the history of the Roman Church and reformed in Vatican II. Again, Monsignor Klaus Gamber, in his book Reform of the Roman Liturgy, I have it back there and I talked about it in a couple of videos past, with an introduction by the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, in the French edition, makes explicitly clear that the traditional Roman Rite, the Roman Rite, has been destroyed. That in the entire history of the Church, there has never ever been a reform as the one undertaken by Paul VI. That his so-called reform was a destruction of the Roman Rite. It was no longer the Roman Rite. And so they tell you, Pius V reformed the liturgy, and Pius XII did whatever. He changed slightly the rites of Holy Week. But again, that shouldn't have been done. But again, it was nothing by comparison to what happened, not just to the Mass, but to all seven sacraments by Paul VI and his junta. The Council Fathers, including the future Pope Benedict XVI, so Benedict XVI should know better, because he was not a father, he was an expert to the Fathers, clearly believed that the Tridentine Rite needed to be reformed and renewed. Yeah, but that's why all of them kind of rejected, when they actually performed, they did the show of the Reformed liturgy, most of the bishops rejected it. They said, well, non-acceptable. But still, that was shoved down everybody's throat, because apparently the Pope is a dictator and his will is law now. The aim was not to have two rites. It was to deepen and enrich the one rite of the Roman Church. Yeah, but that didn't happen. A totally fabricated liturgy, as Pope Benedict XVI himself called it, came into being to attempt to replace the Roman Rite in God's image. It is important to remember that the liturgical renewal was grounded in the renewal of the Church's philosophy of the human person, as well as ecclesiology. Here we go. Didn't I mention it before? Why is the ancient Roman liturgy, which embodies the ancient Christian Catholic faith, unacceptable, according to these people and to Francis? Why? Why? Because it is not in conformity to the new understanding of the church's philosophy of the human person, as well as its ecclesiology. So you're telling us explicitly now that the church has a new faith, a different understanding of the human person than what it had for 2,000 years, that the church has a new understanding of ecclesiology than it did for 2,000 years. Therefore, what is Christian? What is Catholic? The 2,000 years of understanding or the invented 20th century understanding? You are telling us exactly why to reject the Novus Ordo, why to reject the Rite of Paul VI for all 7 sacraments, why to reject the new Reformed rite for exorcism and the new pontifical, because it's all in the same vein, adhering to the new philosophy of the human person and new ecclesiology, and actually new understanding of sacraments too. Vatican II provided definitive teachings. Again, Cardinal Ratzinger, 1988, to the Chilean bishops as head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith for 50 billion years under Pope John Paul II, under Saint Pope John Paul II, explicitly states to the Chilean bishops in 1988 that this Second Vatican Council itself restricted itself to being a merely pastoral council that defined no dogma. Yet, he says, Benedict or Ratzinger at the time, saying, yet many treat it as a star from zero, as a super council or a super dogma that erased all the rest. So, provided definitive teaching about the nature of the church. Again, it was a pastoral document with lots of words. So even if, and such a nature of the church cannot contradict 2,000 years of teaching, 2,000 years of prayer, 2,000 years of tradition, developed the understanding of the dignity of the human person. Who says the church before the council, the one and only super dogma council, which defined nothing, didn't understand anything about the dignity of the human person? The traditional rite and the prayers while the priest is washing his hands. No, before washing, I think adding the water to the wine, drop of water to the wine, or washing of the hands. One of the two. In the prayers, the priest is saying to Jesus Christ, telling him, or to God the Father, that you who humbled yourself to share, to elevate you. I have the missal. Should I just let me see here. If I have it open, I'll just read you the text itself. Give me 1 second. Let's see if I have it somewhere open so I don't have to. Yeah, let's see here. I just want to read you this. Give me a second. I'm on another web page, so you don't really see what I'm saying. Oh, come on, where are you? Okay, here we go. It is after the offertory. Here's the prayer. It says, O God, who in creating, that's in the traditional Roman Rite, and the real Roman Rite, O God, who in creating human nature didst wonderfully dignify it. So God wonderfully dignified in Latin as Deus qui humane substantiae dignitatem mirabiliter condidisti et mirabilius reformasti. O God, who in creating human nature did wonderfully dignify it and still more wonderfully restore it. The dignity of the human person, dignity of man, was for 2,000 years prayed, recognized in the traditional Roman Rite. And it continues, grant that by the mystery of this water and wine, we may be made partakers of his divine nature. So what more dignity do you want than being partakers of the divine nature of him who vouchsafed to be made partaker of our human nature, even Jesus Christ our Lord? This is in the ancient Roman Rite, in the real Roman Rite. It wasn't invented by Vatican II. And restored the baptismal vocation of the laity. Oh yeah. Yeah, we see the laity, how they were crushed after Vatican II. No laity asked for a reformed liturgy, of a new rite, of a new discipline, of a new calendar of the saints, of a new code of canon law. Nobody asked for any of that stuff. Now we have actually clericalism, because the laity are being shut up, forced to obey. Or you are not in full communion with the Catholic Church. We're going to ban your liturgy, kick you out of the, like it happened in New Zealand with the Sons of the Most Holy Redeemer. We're going to shut you down. We're going to not even bring priests to say the ancient rite for the hundreds of parishioners you have now who move to your church. No. We're going to kick you out. We're going to shut down the ancient liturgy. Maybe we'll do it once every month. And you have to obey because I'm the bishop. Where's the love of the laity? None of it. Grounded less in neo-Thomistic categories like transubstantiation and substance and accidents, and more in the notion that we are all born in the image and likeness of God. The ancient liturgy emphasizes that. And actually in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and repeated in the Compendium of the Catechism, we are not all born in the image and likeness of God. We are born in the image of God. The likeness of, but we do not have the likeness of God because we have lost it through original sin. And through actual mortal sin, we lose the likeness to God. Only through penance and confession and forgiveness, we restore our likeness to God. This is in the Vatican II Compendium to the Compendium of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And this is actually what Archbishop Schneider once said. We have, the image, but the likeness, no. Only if you're in a state of grace, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, then you have the likeness of God. This is how we become divinized. We become sharers in the divine nature. Imago Dei, the image of God. But not everybody is. Both Gaudium et Spes and Dignitate Humani affirmed the human being. So what does this have to do with the liturgy? What does this have to do with the liturgy? Aimed at the human being, it's oriented towards God. Yeah, I guess nobody knew that before. And shaped by a capacity to be in union with God. Well, the liturgy of the ancient Roman Church tells you that we are going to be incorporated into the divinity of Him who shared our humanity. We have no idea about that stuff until Vatican II. A capacity only brought by the fruition of God's gift. That's the human. Thus, the human person, see again, babbling about stuff which has nothing to do with the liturgy. Thus, the human person, all human persons can only be understood in the light of the person of Jesus Christ. Yeah, if you're not in Christ, you're not in God. So you need to be incorporated into Jesus Christ. And how do you do that, little Jesuits? By baptism. He who is baptized is saved. He who is not baptized is damned, as Jesus Christ himself said. Lumen Gentium further affirmed that the human vocation to holiness was not restricted to the clergy and religious orders, rather to all Christians who have a vocation to sanctity. Oh, so I guess all the ancient saints never knew that they had to be holy, that they had to pray and fast and do penance and try to be as holy as, to be perfect as God their Father in heaven is perfect, until Vatican II. Are you stupid, or you think we're stupid? Are you dumb, or you think we're dumb? And what happened after Vatican II? Are all Christians, are all Catholics in such high degrees of sanctity and holiness? On the contrary, we are in a state of debauchery and sin. We are in a state of apostasy. By their fruits you shall know them, as God says. This understanding of the human person and the meaning of baptism means that the laity in Apostolicam Actuari, whatever, teaches to share in the priestly, prophetic, and royal office of Christ. Therefore, have their own share in the mission of the whole people of God. Yeah, it's true, because we are, as St. Peter says, repeating what was told to the Jews, to the Hebrews and the Israelites in the Old Testament. We are a priestly nation, a holy kingdom, a chosen race. So this is, and even in baptism, we all share in the priesthood of Christ, because we are part of the body of Christ, and Christ is a priest. But there is a difference, little boys and girls, little theologians of the Jesuits. There's a difference between the priesthood, the sacrificial, ministerial priesthood of Jesus Christ, and the priesthood of all believers. We're not Protestant heretics here. We have a ministerial, sacred priesthood. Jesus Christ ordained the apostles to his priesthood. That is why when St. Peter told Jesus, "Oh, no, you don't wash my feet. No, you don't wash it." But he was washing everybody else. Jesus said to him, "Oh, this is just a gesture of humility, you know." No, he didn't tell him that. Well, he did explain it later, that the need for humility, but he said, "If I don't wash you, you cannot have any part of me or with me." What is he talking about? This was a liturgical rite of ordination to the priesthood. Matches again what Moses did with Aaron and his sons. Ordination to the priesthood. And part of me, part of Christ. What is this magic part of Christ what you have to wash? His high priesthood. The apostles were high priests. The bishops are high priests of the new covenant. There is a difference. But of course, the so-called believers in Vatican II, which are not, they are perverters of the actual documents, the letters of Vatican II, and talk about the Spirit, which surpasses the letter. They promote a Protestant understanding. We don't need real priests. We want the laity ruling the church. The church is the kingdom of Christ. Christ appointed, he's the king, and he has his vicar, being the successor of Peter. In doctrine and in morality and teaching, they are the teachers, not the laity, not the synodal path where the laity teaches the teachers. In the Acts of the Apostles, we see the new believers. It says they went to surrounded the apostles and adhered to their doctrine and teaching, the doctrine and teaching of the apostles, not made up stuff themselves. But as such, we must understand, again, what does this have to do with the liturgy? Let me just going to do a quick read, because I don't want to just keep on reading for no reason. The laity are not just done to, they are active participant in the life of the church, as expressed with the service, witness, and worship. The liturgy is a function of the priesthood. It's not the function of the laity. Every minor order in the church, which were not officially banned, but Paul VI said, well, we're no longer going to ordain people into the minor orders, the four minor orders, porter, lector, exorcist, and acolyte, and subdeacon we can ignore. But he didn't really officially ban it. He just said, well, we're no longer going to do that. But the traditionalist orders still maintain that tradition, and Eastern churches still have minor orders. And all these orders are geared towards the temple worship of the New Covenant, the liturgical, Eucharistic sacrifice. It's not function of the laity. Find the most ancient documents. It is always the clergy, which included the acolytes, lectors, porters, all for the liturgy. It was not the laity. We didn't have women go up and read the gospel, or read the letter, or they read the epistle, or give Holy Communion to people, the laity. Nobody dared touch that. Priests only gave the Eucharist, the body, and the blood. I mean, it was the bishop who did it, but if there was no bishop, it would be the priest who gave the body. And because in the ancient church they gave as well the blood, either the priest gave the blood, the chalice, or the deacon gave the chalice, not laity. The priest gave the body, the deacon gave the chalice, and the chalice is called the mystery of faith. And I did a big review on the fraud of communion in the hand. It's one of these videos where it talks about, and I quote these ancient documents where the expression mystery of faith is referred specifically to the blood of the Lamb, the consecrated wine. That's why in the Ancient Roman Rite, it's simply called, after the wine is consecrated, it says Mysterium Fidei, the mystery of faith. We don't need to have an acclamation or anything, because it is just saying mystery of faith is the body, the blood of the Lamb. And it is only the clergy who gave that. Laity did not jump around the sanctuary. This is a simple act of defilement of the holies and the Holy of Holies, which is reserved for the clergy and for the priests and the bishops. Especially active participation in the sacred liturgy. What do you mean? So you need people running around the altar, running around and grabbing everything? Is that active participation? Or true active participation is to be fully imbued with the spirit of the liturgy, the prayers of the liturgy, the whole ethos of the liturgy, united your heart and tongue and mind in the prayer of the liturgy as in the traditional rite. I don't need to be running around like a clown in the sanctuary to be actively participating. You're not actively participating. You're pretending to be a cleric when you're not. It is from out of this deepened and broadened understanding of human vocation and baptismal character that deepened and broadened engagement in engagement with the liturgy arises. Oh yeah, we have such great full churches, full seminaries, full of vocations into the monastic orders. Oh yeah, this deepened understanding. What happened is a secularization and desacralization of the liturgy, which has led to the loss of faith and a banal liturgy, a boring liturgy. That's why Catholics, as soon as they become teenagers, no longer go to Mass. As soon as they get their confirmation, they hardly go to Mass after that. Why? Because it's boring. They'd rather be sitting there on their iPad or watching TV. There's nothing spiritual, nothing otherworldly, nothing mystical. This is a pedestrian liturgy, a banal fabrication, as Cardinal Ratzinger, Benedict XVI said. Lay liturgical action is the primary purpose of the deformed liturgy. So they want liturgical action Lay liturgical action. Contradiction in terms. Contradiction in terms. Vatican II called active participation, but the word active, again, there are articles and written about the Latin word for active participation, which does not mean people running around the sanctuary and doing stuff. It means being imbued with the liturgy, meaning participating, responding to the prayers, knowing what's going on, and being worshiping in spirit and in truth. It's not running around like a bunch of clowns in the sanctuary. Okay, I'm actually tired of reading. Let's see how much more. Okay, it's almost done. So I'm not going to read the exact same here. Let's see. So basically it says, oh yeah, in Sacrosanctum Concilium, it says, we don't want strangers and silent spectators for the people. Well, that's why the liturgical movement, the original liturgical movement, was started. And why missals, I don't have my missal, like missals, big jumbo missals like this, with English and, English and Latin, were being printed for people to not being strangers and silent spectators, to be fully engaged in the liturgy, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And and people were there. There were huge conversions to the Catholic faith. This was basically a desire, which actually even John the 23rd and I think Pius XII, and even Pius X with his reintroduction of Gregorian chant, wanted people to fully, and the point of the liturgical movement, the original liturgical movement, was to get people much more into the spirit of the liturgy, to the liturgical rites, to the received rites, not invented new ones. What do you think the rest of the people are? They're just sitting there watching these women most of the time, running around the sanctuary, washing their hands and disinfecting it, and pretending to be, acolytes and pretending to be deacons, giving away the body of the Lamb. Now, there might have been some abuses where priests were just basically totally silently saying the ancient rite, like in the low mass, which is actually was a private mass for monks. It was not meant for the churches. And in the low mass, actually, the rubrics explicitly says, I have a video on it, make the low mass audible again, because in the rubrics explicitly it says certain things have to be said aloud. Certain have to think in a lower tone of voice. Very few things were in a very low tone of voice, like the secret or the canon, but they were said. And you shouldn't be rushing things. That's it. That's all the reform you needed. And probably actually reintroduce on a much more regular basis sung and chanted masses and solemn high masses, which is the standard. A low mass is kind of like the least of the least. It's kind of like it was meant originally, it started by monks because it was their own personal prayer. The silent mass, it was just a monk and his server, that's it, in a monastery. In churches, what it was meant to be was chanted, sung, incense, the whole shebang. It's not for the people, it is for the glory of God and for his service, for his worship, which indirectly and directly elevated the hearts of the people. So, but human participation is not only inward. So they want to, yes, it is inward and outward. In what sense? By kneeling, by standing, by bowing, by prostrating. These are external signs of interior prayer. It is not by running around the sanctuary, and it's not around, getting dressed up and pretending to be a cleric. It is not by handling the most sacred of sacreds, which is the very body of God himself, God incarnate, and giving him out like a potato chip in people's hands. While the Tridentine Rite is silent on the movements and actions of the laity, is that bad? It gives the laity the freedom. Aren't you all about freedom, you Jesuits? The laity, it's silent. Actually, I mean, there's kind of like now a standard, like in the various missals, that, you get the custom of the area. Like in Europe, and the Sanctus, the Holy, 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 I've noticed in Europe, they don't kneel. They will kneel at the start of the canon. In North America, we kneel at the Holy, 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 which is kind of more actually biblical, where you see the angels bowing down, Holy, 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 to the triune God. But that's a custom of the faithful. So the ancient Roman Rite didn't have to sit there and say, you stand, you sit, you kneel, you bow. It is the people's tradition, which evolved over time and in the region. This is true Catholicism. This is true freedom. And in case you needed hints, now they later, in the liturgical movement, gave you when to stand, when to sit, when to do whatever. The rite promulgated by Paul VI, thank you very much. It is the rite promulgated by Paul VI, the Rite of Paul VI, the liturgical novelty of the new rite, as Paul VI called his own creation, invites us in body and soul to the actions of the liturgy, like what, running around the sanctuary, that we offer with the priest. We offer with the priest. You do not offer the sacrifice with the priest. It is the priest's only and exclusive right and privilege and power to offer sacrifice. That's why he is a priest. A priest is one who offers sacrifice. We can, in our hearts, offer our sacrifice with the priest in a sense, but we have nothing to do with the true unbloody sacrifice of the cross happening upon the altar. The lex orandi of the contemporary liturgy, they're not the Catholic liturgy, the made-up modern one, expresses the lex credenti. Oh, here you go. It tells you. The lex orandi, the law of prayer of the contemporary liturgy, not the traditional Roman Rite, expresses the lex credendi, meaning the law of faith, the law of belief, of the Church's ecclesiology and its theology of the laity. So, which tells you that the Church's ecclesiology and its theology of the laity has changed after 1969 or 1965. So for 1965 years, we had a different ecclesiology and a different theology of the laity that was apparently wrong for almost 2,000 years. That's why we needed a new liturgy, because we have a new ecclesiology and a new theology of the laity. And theology, by definition, is the study of God. Theos, God. Nothing to do with the laity, but of course, let's make the laity divine. Why not? Where is it? The Tridentine Rite does not do so, which maybe it should not do so, because that is the traditional rite of the Church. This is the apostolic faith coming down to us for 2,000 years. Or at least not as ably. Oh yeah, we have the experts and Bonini and Protestant advisors to concoct a new Bain and Alderspot fabrication, so we can have a really good expression of the new ecclesiology and the new theology of the laity of the Post Conciliar Church. To celebrate the latter, meaning the traditional Roman Rite, is to have insufficient practice of worship, that insufficiently expresses church teaching. So, to practice the very rich, very dogmatic, very Catholic prayers, traditions, rites of the church, so rich by comparison to the watered down garbage of the Novus Ordo. Let's be kind of like frank, the banal stuff, the pablum of the Novus Ordo doesn't express church teaching. But again, he's telling you explicitly, the Jesuits are explicitly telling you that the new rite, the Novus Ordo, the Rite of Paul VI, teaches a different ecclesiology than what the church taught for 2,000 years, a different theology of the laity than what the church taught for 2,000 years. Which rite do you accept as Catholic? That's my question. I'm just kind of doing quickly. So, yeah, it's almost done. I am getting tired of speaking, actually. And I know only a few are going to watch the video and then watch 10 minutes and turn it off. And I speak for 2 hours. That's okay. That's okay. This is for posterity. So I say what needs to be said. Doesn't matter who watches, who listens. Where are we here? Yeah, it doesn't express the church's teaching. Well, the Post Conciliar new ecclesiology and new theology of the laity and new Eucharistic theology, no sacramental theology. Okay, because it's no longer neo-Thomistic. Much of what characterizes the ordinary form of the liturgy, meaning the fake Roman Rite of Paul VI, is the broadened sense of participation in the sacred mystery of the Mass. There is no more mystery. Kids go there bored out of their minds. That's why they no longer go to Mass. There is no mystery. Balancing the two essential aspects, the Eucharistic sacrifice, which doesn't look like a sacrifice because the priest is facing the people, giving his back to the tabernacle, chatting with them. It's a celebration of one another. It's a celebration of, it's a liturgy in a circle instead of facing God incarnate, as all the ancient liturgies of the church, East and West, Orthodox, Catholic, Oriental Orthodox, Assyrian, all the priest always faces the East, faces the rising sun, faces the direction from which Christ will be coming at the end of the day to judge the living and the dead. So Jesuits, get ready. When the Lamb comes on a white horse with his garments soaked in blood to render judgment on the living and the dead. So between the essential, the Eucharistic sacrifice of his body and blood, and the Paschal banquet in which Christ is eaten. A banquet which invites all to participate with the host. So the priest is a host. It's a meal. And this is the emphasis of, that's why he faces the people. That's why there's a table instead of an altar. It's like, the altar, but it looks like a table. And he's facing his guests, because we're guests. We're just going to eating at the table. It's no longer the sacrifice of Christ, and then we eat the lamb sacrificed to the Father. This is the essence. The banquet is not the Passover meal. It is the receiving of the sacrificed lamb and who is offered in sacrifice to the Father. We participate in the sacrifice by eating the sacrificial victim. A paschal banquet in which Christ is eaten, a banquet which invites all to participate with the host. The priest is the host. He's the presider. He's no longer the priest. He presided at the banquets. He's the steward. Thus we conform our sacrifice with the priest while sharing in the banquet through the offertory, sign of peace, reception in both kinds. Again, that's not on all rites. And actually, a reception in both kinds, I think in the ancient Roman Rite, the traditional rite, we should restore a reception under both kinds. This is the tradition. Christ said, eat my flesh and drink my blood. Yeah, but in the body, there's the blood too. Yes, I understand. Actually, in the ancient church, people would take the body home with them, which means that the whole Christ is there. Understood. But the late Middle Ages, to the 14th, 15th centuries, then suddenly the laity were no longer given the chalice or the blood. Why? Because of a certain heresy which started saying that it is necessary, that basically Christ was not complete only in the bread. So let's not. So I would love it to restore the communion under both kinds. You can do the either receiving the chalice, or like in the Greek Malachites would take the body and dip it in tinction, I think it's called. So the body is dipped into the blood and given to the laity, the people. This is traditional. So I have no. By the way, again, and they're both kinds. Okay, we're giving Christ in the hand, which has never happened traditionally in the traditional. No ancient church has it. And I did a video on the fraud of communion in the hand. Like, if it was a regular thing, you could find like churches like, say, the Ethiopians, who have never been in communion with the Catholic Church for like since the 300s, 400s. They don't give communion in the hand. Never, ever. Or the Copts, or the Armenians, or the Syrians, or the Assyrians, or the Indians. Or the Catholics, actually. So, yeah, the communion hand happened on occasion, in case of emergency, in case of trial, in case of... and then there was as well pieces of cloth would be put on the hand, that actually the bare hand would never touch the flesh, but that's not the topic of the point. Second of all, no laity were giving away the Eucharist. Ritualized movements of our bodies, one like liturgical dance, I don't know. For this reason, the Council Fathers thought that full and active conscious participation is non-negotiable. Yeah, that's why go to a traditional rite, go to a traditional Roman rite, sung Mass, and you will find full active participation of the congregation singing and chanting the parts of the liturgy, kneeling and standing and bowing and crossing themselves. Yeah, full and active participation in the real Roman rite, not the fabricated liturgy of Bonini and Paul VI. Lex orandi, one expressive of the true meaning of being member of the people. So look at this. Look at the insult. Lex orandi, one expressive of the true meaning of being a member of the people of God gathered at what is both the altar of sacrifice and the table of the Lord's body. Meaning the ancient rite, which is, and all the ancient Eastern churches' rites are all false. They do not express the true meaning of being a member of the people of God. How insulting, how prideful is this? Well, it's from the father of the devil, who fell because of pride. The development of doctrine is never a rupture. Well, there is a development in doctrine and an evolution of doctrine. Two separate things. Development deepens what is there. Evolution, which is what you're doing, is changing the very essence, the very meaning of the thing, and keeping the same name. This is why Traditionis Custodes Pope Francis served to preserve the tradition, because he guarded the full expression. Oh my God! I mean, I'm like, I don't know what to say. So destroying tradition is preserving tradition. Eliminating the ancient, fully super rich tradition of the church with watered down liturgy is guarding the full expression. Well, this is exactly what the devil says. What is, you say, what is yes is no, what is no is yes. What is good is evil, what is evil is good. This is what they are. This is what they say. This is what, what they're Jorge. What Jorge Bergoglio, who claimed hell is empty. He was on television saying that. He believes, I believe, I kind of want to believe in hell is empty, and then so nobody's there. And that souls do not live forever. They are annihilated for the evil souls, as he told Eugenio Scalfari. And that there is no single unique God, but all religions worship that one God, as he again told Eugenio Scalfari. He was a heretic apostate. And he was never ever Pope because Benedict was alive. And never abandoned the papacy as such. Just its administrative governing powers, as he himself says. Governing powers of the... I no longer have the power for governance, as he himself says in his last audience. But he never... But what I did, which is amazing, I did not revoke what I received in 2005. Oh, okay, well, meaning the papacy. Okay, then. Leo must take up the custodial role himself. If Summorum Pontificum and Traditionis Custodes offer different understandings of the lex orandi of the Roman Rite, then Leo must affirm one of them as the right understanding of the faithful, and resolve a significant division in the life of the Church. I fully agree. So he must tell us and resolve that the ancient Roman Rite, which existed for almost 2,000 years, is the right understanding of the faithful. It is the one. Because the other one was invented in the late 60s by committee with watered down prayers and watered down orations and watered down doctrine. Therefore, and it was never called by Paul VI as the Roman Rite, but as the new Rite, it is not the Roman Rite. Yeah, I would love for him to do that, but I am sure he will not. He will maybe kind of say, well, let's live with tradition and novelty together. Like he said recently, tradition and novelty. No. Novelty was never Christian. Novelty was condemned by St. Paul, by the ancient fathers, by the apostles, by the martyrs. Tradition is what upholds. Novelty is condemned. Novelty is not Catholic. Novelty is not Christian. So, but of course, I know he will not go and say, well, the ancient Roman Rite is the real Roman Rite. We should slowly, gradually eliminate the fabricated liturgy of Paul VI. He will not say that. What I would hope is he would just give total freedom to novelty and tradition. And may the best rite win. But the propagators of error and heresy and evil prompted Francis to attempt to destroy the ancient Roman Rite. Why? Because it was winning. It was growing. And people were being awakened to the richness of the tradition they were robbed from. Incorporating traditional elements, Leo would be wise in implementing Traditionis Custodes, of course that's what they want, in a pastoral way, but also in a way that affirms that the liturgy as practiced by the vast majority of Catholics under duress. No, the vast majority of Catholics never asked for this liturgy. The vast majority of Catholics one day went to church, found that the liturgy they've known for hundreds of years changed. They were faced with a new rite. Paul VI himself in his letters says, in his speeches, which I quoted twice, in two different speeches, the most faithful will be the most annoyed, the most confused, the most hurt, the most confounded, because they are the most faithful. Will find these changes very confusing and very disturbing. The faithful, the vast majority of Catholics, did not want the new rite. They just woke up one day, suddenly the priest is facing them, they destroy their statues and high altars and and altar rails, and suddenly the priest is facing them, giving them communion in the hand, a totally new liturgy. Nobody asked for that. It just got shoved down people's throats. So give the people the freedom to choose the tradition they want to adhere to. And let's see who has more vocations, who builds new monasteries, who founds new religious orders, and who has more baptisms and marriages and children. And let's see. Let the best rite win. Let the Spirit go breathe where He wills. Aren't you all about the Spirit? Let the Spirit breathe where He wills. Or do you need to suffocate the Spirit? In so doing, he should direct bishops to affirm the core insight that actually comes from the traditionalists of the Church. The contemporary liturgy needs more reverence and a more transcendent orientation. Even if there was no more reverence, the very rites, the very prayers are watered down. Being more reverent, more incense and Gregorian chants on the fabricated liturgy does not make it the traditional rite. Adding smells and bells does not alter its nature from a new rite to the traditional rite. We need a deeply traditional celebration of the contemporary rite. Thank you very much. It is the contemporary rite. It is not the Roman rite. And how can you have a traditional celebration on a contemporary rite? That defeats the whole purpose of the new theology of the laity, where they run around the sanctuary like chickens with their heads cut off. This would be a contradiction to the very ethos, the very essence, the very raison d'etre of the new rites, with its new ecclesiology and new theology of the laity and new understanding of the Eucharistic sacrifice. It is impossible. How can this be done? Oh, let's integrate some more Latin. Again, as I said, it doesn't make any difference. It can be the whole thing in Latin, with Gregorian chants. With incense, does not make a pig into a princess. Doesn't turn a frog into a prince. Doesn't change the Novus Ordo Missae, the liturgical novelty of the new rite, into the traditional Roman rite. Doesn't work that way. Oh, let's sing the Sanctus and Agnus Dei and Gloria and Pater Noster in Latin. Yeah, but it's still the Novus Ordo. Now it tells prayer should be prayed in Latin. Well, aren't you the same people who for like decades, for 70 years, been yelling and screaming, Vatican II tells us we sell the liturgy in English, in our vernacular, even though Vatican II, which tells you that they never follow the letter, they follow the so-called spirit. Vatican II said Gregorian chants has to be maintained. People have to know how to sing the prayers in Latin or respond in Latin. The Latin language is to be maintained in the Latin rites, meaning not just the Roman rite, meaning the other rites of the Roman Church, of the Latin West, are to be maintained. Not eliminated like the Dominican, the Carthusian, the whatever other ones. Now they're telling us, oh, bring some Latin back, Oh, let's give pride of usage to the Roman canon, Eucharistic Prayer 1. Yeah, that's the only, again, we're talking about, so you're telling us to avoid the fabricated Eucharistic prayers, the made-up ones? Well, why don't you just go for the full throat, go back to the original, go back to the full rite of the Roman Church, instead of trying to add a bit here and there to fool, to deceive faithful Catholics who are not fully understanding of the radical difference between the ancient rite and the Novus Ordo, into being fooled into going to the Novus Ordo, believing it is, the same liturgy. No, it's not. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's almost finished. Let's do the third, celebration of the Eucharistic prayer. So only the canon ad orientem can be welcome as a rich liturgical option. When Cardinal Robert Sarah, when he was still head of the congregation for the divine worship and the sacraments, said, I would love it if encourage that the liturgy should be ad orientem, facing the Orient, facing the East, at least in the canon of the Mass. He was shut down by Francis. He was kicked out of the congregation for the doctrine, for the congregation for the discipline of the sacraments and the liturgy. Now they're saying these options. Oh, let's bring some Latin. Oh, let's bring back the Eucharistic prayer one more officially. Oh, let's have some, at least the canon of the Mass facing east. Oh, because they know they have lost. They know that they have lost the plot. They have lost the fight. They have lost the liturgical war, which they reignited with Francis. Your little tricks are not going to fool us into believing that the Rite of Paul VI is the Roman Rite. These are little tricks trying to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And actually, he says, in parishes where the Tridentine Rite has been celebrated as an option, should be encouraged to celebrate the ordinary form, but in Latin ad orientem. So basically, they want, even for the parishes where the Ancient Roman Rite is celebrated, let's encourage them to say the Novus Ordo in Latin ad orientem. Why? To gradually get people away from the traditional rite, from the real Roman Rite, to the new ecclesiology, the new theology of the laity, of the Rite of Paul VI, and add many ascetic features to genuinely elevate the mind and the heart to God. So now you're talking about it. So again, many liturgical abuses go unchecked in many parishes, but that's what you wanted. This is your active participation. And what is an abuse? What is an abuse? Communion in the hand was an abuse. It was forced upon the church. Paul VI never authorized it. John Paul II condemned it until finally he even wrote letters against it. I can't remember the name often. He would never give communion in the hand until finally he relented. Again, what's an abuse? Altar girls. Again, it was an abuse. Foisted upon the church, condemned by John Paul II. Until again, finally, he relented and said, well, okay, fine, you can have girls as altar boys. What is liturgical abuse? It is the whole rite of Paul VI is a liturgical abuse. By implementing Traditionis Custodes, which is, as I said, wet used toilet paper, and this is my reverence for it to that extent, with these pastoral touches, Leo can show himself as to be a pastor to those attached to the Tridentine Rite, the real Roman Rite. There's no such thing as the Tridentine Rite, and affirm that they are still deeply committed to Catholic, and affirm that they are still deeply committed Catholics. Yeah, that's why they're shutting down parishes and shoving traditional Catholics out into the hinterland. He can thus encourage pastors to be sensitive to the good motivations that shape longings of a more traditional Catholics while avoiding spiritual harm. Spiritual harm meaning what? Adhering to the ancient Roman Rite? Because, of course, it is a spiritual harm. Because, of course, it is against the lex credendi of the Post Conciliar Church with the or a new ecclesiology, a new theology of the laity, a new understanding of the sacraments. It is part of the mission of the Pope to guard the tradition. Yes, guard the tradition, not invent a new tradition. guard the received rites as the Creed of Trent and the Creed of Vatican I say, not invent new ones as Paul VI did. And ensure unity, but you ensure unity not through uniformity, but through the freedom of the children of God, where let the Spirit blow where he may, by giving freedom to the ancient rites of the Church, East and West. First of all, no pope has the power to forbid the ancient rite. No pope. He is not God incarnate. He is not an absolute monarch whose will is law. In fact, he is bound to adhere to the ancient rites, as the Creed of Trent and Creed of Vatican I says, to the received rites. He has an ecclesiastical traditions and apostolic traditions he embraces, he receives, he adheres to, as the Creed of Trent and Vatican I says. To do otherwise is not Catholic. To do otherwise is not Christian. To do otherwise would be heretical. That's why, quoted by Monsignor Klaus Gamber, who had the book on the problems with the revised Roman liturgy, with the introduction by Ratzinger, Benedict XVI, in his French edition, says that there is not a single document, there is not a single canon in the entire corpus of canons, law of the Church, from the Gratian canons, all of it. There is not one single canon that gives the Pope the right to ban a single local liturgical usage, let alone ban the whole rite of the ancient of the Roman Church and replace it with new ones. He actually tells you that various theologians, which I quoted previously, like Torquemada, Cajetan and Suarez, declare unambiguously that the Pope would no doubt would become a schismatic, would fall into schism if he refuses himself to celebrate the received rites or chooses to replace the received rites used in the administration of the sacraments with new ones. He would, without a doubt, become a schismatic. So no Pope has that authority. No Pope has the authority. His only authority is to be a guardian of the tradition he received, not the protector of novelty and the imposition of novelty. To do so, Pope Leo XIV would, they discovered he's Pope Leo XIV, not Pope Leo XVI. Oh, good for you. Good for you. We'll have to reconcile the liturgical division between the previous two papacies. Well, as I said, one was a pope, which is Benedict XVI. The other one was never pope. Because in his last will and testament himself, Francis says, my whole life as priest and bishop. Doesn't mention pope. In all his documents, in his so-called encyclicals, in his speeches, it always ends with just Francis. No pope, no PP, pope and pontiff, no nothing. Unlike Benedict, and of course, unlike Leo XIV. Because why? Benedict was still alive, as I mentioned a billion times already. He was the administrator bishop of the Diocese of Rome, running the Catholic Church instead of the impeded Vicar of Christ, Benedict XVI. Amongst Catholics, it will be no easy task. But why does he have to do the reconcile liturgical divisions? Why? Where's the problem? Where is the problem? So does Leo XIV have to reconcile the liturgical divisions between Catholics of the Byzantines, the Romans, the Armenians, the Coptic, the Ethiopic, the Chaldean, the Syro-Malabar, the Malankara? Does he have to reconcile these liturgical divisions to have unity in the Catholic Church? No. This is your motto of diversity, unity and diversity. But apparently you don't want that. You want no diversity. You want dictatorial adhesion to a fabricated liturgy in the 1960s. Yeah, so he has to reconcile liturgical division of the two papacies amongst Catholics. So I guess the liturgical divisions of Catholics of the Byzantine Rite and the Chaldean Rite and the Armenian Rite and the Coptic Rite and the Ethiopic Rite, they need to be reconciled. We cannot allow these divisions. It will be not an easy task, but I certainly trust that he is the right man to watch over the fullness of what has been handed on. Yeah, the fullness is the traditional Roman Rite. It is not the watered down Rite of Paul VI. And thus to bring greater unity to our prayer and belief. What's the problem? Do you have a unity of prayer and belief? You don't have unity because I'm a Greek Melkite Catholic, or I'm a Coptic Catholic, or I'm an Armenian Catholic, so because my prayer, way of offering my prayers is different than yours, we don't have unity of belief? Is that what you're saying? This shows you the mental midgets and the evil people who have been attacking the Catholic Church, the traditional rites, which embody the faith. So finally, to close, lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. How we pray, orandi, affects how we believe, what we believe. Prayer affects belief, and belief affects how we live. They are all the Trinity of Christianity. Prayer, belief, life. To alter prayer, to water it down, to make it vague, to make it more ecumenical, is to alter belief, and by altering belief, you alter life. And that's why we have the grand apostasy which we see around us. So-called Catholics who no longer go to Mass. So-called Catholics who no longer believe in the teachings of the Church. So-called Catholics, even Jesuits like Thomas Rees, who said, I don't believe in transubstantiation. Explicitly. So, yeah. So what do? Well, we keep the one true faith. And I have great hope in Pope Leo XIV, actually. He is kind of stuck. He's trying to rehabilitate Jorge Bergoglio, picking what is true in his statements and ignoring the vast poison in his teaching. But he's stuck. What is he going to do? It's a tough position to be in. It's a tough position. Of course, we would want him to anathematize this and ban this and declare that, but that might cause more harm than good. So he has a tough job. So we should actually pray for him truly, that he does the will of Christ and only the will of Christ, guided by the Holy Spirit of God. Anyways, that's it. That's all. Hopefully you enjoyed this very long video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.